Hey Internet, Auric speaking. Welcome back to the channel. Welcome back to some Riibalanced. Today we're playing Wario, which you probably could guess by now means that we're going to be playing the Wario bike. Now the Wario bike was originally designed, I believe the Wario bike was the second vehicle developed in the Riibalanced mod pack, and it has, I want to say, been through the most changes out of every other vehicle. So it's been inside drifting, it's been outside drifting, we'll get to that in a second why. But the main reason why we were so excited or really wanted to give this a try was because the Wario bike is the heaviest vehicle in the game. Bar none. It's not even close. I'm gonna just kind of do a little demonstration here. And as you can see, that dry bones is off the minimap and off the track. I bet I could do a little bit more bumpage, but he just happened to be the only light character around. And the reason why we wanted to develop a weight class vehicle is because inside of stock Mario Kart Wii, I'm sure as many of you guys know, the Flame Runner is the best vehicle combination in the game. So how do you defeat something like the Flame Runner without just making a better Flame Runner, without just making a faster vehicle? So one of the very first experiments we wanted to mess around with was, okay, we need to figure out a way to beat a speed class. What about a weight class vehicle? Because the one thing that a lot of people don't realize about the Flame Runner is, yes, stock Flame Runner is very good and very OP. And for the longest time, the hypothesis was because it was inside drifting and because it was, fast, for the lack of a better term. Everyone put a lot of emphasis back in the day over just being an inside drifting bike. And we wanted to challenge what are the limits of, like, how much does inside drifting really matter compared to, all the other characteristics, all the other stats? Because, in the beginning of development, acceleration was generally considered a really, really useless stat, and inside drift was considered the best stat of all time. This is an interesting track. Luckily, I don't have to worry about getting bumped around because I am the heaviest vehicle combination here. I'm gonna be starting from the back, though. So anyway, what was I talking about last race? What was I talking about? I'm sorry, I have really bad memory, and sometimes my brain just blots out. I was just getting a drink of water, and I just completely forgot what the heck I was talking about. I think it was something to do with the Wario, but let me see if I could retrace my steps. We were talking about weight, balanced. Oh, contesting the limits of what we thought were currently possible for the item statistics. Yes, of course. All right, so we wanted to test that hypothesis. How far can you make it, and at what point do the individual stats start breaking? And the very first stat that we wanted to mess with was weight, because weight was probably the closest thing to speed. So many people made an emphasis on speed being, obviously the most important stat. And then after that, generally the consensus was that weight. And when I say speed, I'm talking speed and mini turbo. Speed and mini turbo are combined with each other. So we wanted to see how far can you take an average vehicle, a vehicle that doesn't have much, and give it a weight stat to the point where it becomes quote-unquote busted. And I think we've succeeded. The original weight stat for the Wario bike was 16. To give you an idea, the weight stat for the Flame Runner and most average vehicles, heavyweight vehicles, is an average of around 4. So by adding a weight stat of 16, that is not a 4 times amount. That is a, what would it be? It'd be a 4 times 4. Is it? No, 24 times the amount, is it? I think so. Yeah, you square the value of it. So it wouldn't be 4 times, it'd be 4 times 4 times. Because that's how exponential things work. Wow, what? Okay, I think my RNG, like the probability of this Riibalanced mod or Mario Kart Wii is rigged. Because I have had so many recordings where I not only get Mario Circuit, but I also get Luigi Circuit. Or like some other like RNG based track, and it's really annoying. Alright, well I'm gonna be playing Luigi Circuit here. Maybe the CPUs realized, they're like, oh, this is a track that we could realistically do really well on. And they do. CPUs are really, really good at this track. Now, one of the things I think a lot of you guys would be interested in was, originally, the design for the Wario bike was we turned it into an inside drifting bike. After all, as I explained in the last race, we were running an experiment. We wanted to see what the limits were of the individual weight stat, or individual stats, starting with the weight stat. Right, this item. Gotta make sure I keep an eye on the road as well. Very important to keep your eye on the road. So, we decided to we basically gave the Wario bike all of the Flame Runner's stats. We made it inside drifting. We made it a little slower, a little weaker, but enough to compete. Enough to compete with the Flame Runner. But just gave it a stronger weight stat. And for a version... back then, we didn't have versions. Version 2.0 didn't even exist. So this would have been version 2.0. We were experimenting, and the Wario bike was by far the meta pick out of every vehicle combination. Back then, of course, there was only 2. There was the standard bike and the flame, of course, the flame runner, and then the warrior bike. But the warrior bike was dominant, and we realized 16 was way too strong of a weight stat. Now, inside of my warrior bike video, because I actually did make a, develop a video for the warrior bike, a lot of people were complaining, and this was the first time I kind of had to come to terms with realizing that I'm not just making a mod, I'm making a game. And whenever there's a game or a company, or you're like running some kind of, I guess, enterprise, infrastructure, corporation, whatever you want to call it, a project, you're going to have backlash in everything that you do. And this was back then when I didn't realize really how to deal with it. Because from my perspective, I was just one guy, tuning stats and whatnot. But so many people were really, really frustrated with the fact that the warrior bike was outside drifting. Other way around, inside drifting, when it's supposed to be outside drifting, right? And I was like, okay, I could mess with that. So I then tried to mess around with the next stat. So we first started with messing around with the weight stat, and then we moved on to the drift start distance, which is the way that the angle of the vehicle turns. So we made it outside drifting again, and this is technically an outside drifting vehicle, but you may notice something is a little bit different. It doesn't turn that much, and that's because it has a very low drift start distance. So when it turns, the bike actually doesn't rotate 45. I think this vehicle, the comments are going to sound off. It's somewhere in the 30s range. Campbell Mop, when you are watching this, you could correct me, or you could just take a look at the statistics page as well. This has a low drift start distance for the angle of the way that the drift works. And that is what taught us, this vehicle is what taught us about that attribute, the drift start distance, which was really cool. Yeah, this vehicle has been the guinea pig and the cornerstone for so many projects because it was one of the first vehicles that we modified. And we spent a lot of time tuning it to make it so that the weight stat would be, acceptable. I think the weight stat currently is 8, so it's about half of what it used to be, and it's still very strong. The weight stat, again, is not calculated inside of the game engine just by a doubling factor, so a weight stat of, 2 to 4, right, is a ridiculous amount compared to 1 to 2, right? It's not equal. I'm sorry, other way around. A vehicle with a weight stat of 1 getting bumped by a weight stat of 2 would be a lot harder than a vehicle who has a weight stat of 2 getting bumped by a vehicle with a weight stat of 4. It's some kind of logged calculation, which I can't really do in my head that very well. To be fair, most humans are not good at that, but it's something you just kind of have to get a feel of. So for instance, if I bump this Bowser, the Bowser's not going to get sent flying, but if I bump the Baby Daisy is going to be off the track. Like, I could probably, if I hit the Baby Daisy just right, with the right angle, I could probably send her over to the other side of the map. That's like how strong the weight stat difference makes. Oh, okay. Well, that's a bit unfortunate now, isn't it? Okay. One of the many things I was curious about, there were a lot of definitely theories for things that I wanted to do, but physically were not capable of doing. So sometimes you might get these ideas inside of the comment section. Now, I do read the comment sections quite a bit about every Riibalanced video. And they're like, oh, wouldn't it be cool if you could implement this thing? Or like do this crazy mod or do this crazy thing? And trust me, I want to. I see there are so many ideas in the comments where you guys are really, like super creative. I'm like, bro, that would be awesome if that was, even possible to do. But this also comes back down to, what I was trying to do, the vision of the mod. Because the original idea of the mod, I have a script over here, like bullet points, not a script. They just kind of give me a topic point to talk about so I don't get lost while I'm racing. See, we wanted to make sure that the initial idea originally was to make the game tuned up and balanced, right? We just wanted to retune all the vehicles, make it so that all the vehicles are, fine and fun to play with. And then after a while, we began experimenting and using, like adding so much stuff. Okay, and we had to like take a step back. I did use that star, so that sucks. We had to take a step back and think about it. It's like, okay, the vision is no longer, just making a vehicle tunes. Like, we're adding characters, we're adding things, we're adding a bunch of codes. Like, where do we draw the line? Because theoretically, you could add technically whatever you want to the mod. Like, I remember a quote Mr. Bean told me back when I was asking him questions about coding. He's like, with enough due diligence, you could do pretty much anything in Mario Kart Wii. The problem is most people are not A, willing, or B, knowledgeable enough to do all that. But eventually, with brute force, you will eventually be able to do anything that you could possibly dream of. The question is, will you? So we then took a step back. I was like, okay, this is just supposed to be a mod. A very big one, I will admit. But it's supposed to be a mod that makes the gameplay better. So as long as the game or the changes that we're doing make the game better, then that's perfectly applicable. If we're adding something that does not necessarily need to be added, my green shell went through the banana. because it doesn't matter. If we're adding something that's superfluous or unnecessary, then we should not be investing that time, and we should rather be investing time into things that actually do matter. So there was that really clear guidance that we were trying to do. Be sure to grab your copy of Mario Kart Rebalanced version 5 today. Be sure to join the Discord server for technical supports and how to install, and have fun. Mario Kart Rebalanced version 5 available now.